I feel the need to go back to some roots where, the saints was out here getting delivered by this song. It didn't matter what denomination you was, because when you heard Shekinah glory, and they did this, lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord mighty in battle. And then by the end of it, the sopranos and the rafters, Thomas, He is the Lord. I'm not getting up there. I'm obviously on the alto key. I realize that, friend. You don't have to tell me that. But also, the fact that they are up there in the rafters by the end of that song. Ooh. But yeah, that's the He is the Lord. How you hold your head and you got to shake it, get that good vibrato. Yeah. Lift up your head, oh ye gates. All right, here we go. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Save Black Girl Reads, where I am your host, Ariel, the best friend in your head that you never knew that you needed, but you are so glad that you have. Welcome back, friend, to week 2 of Red Lip Theology for church girls who've considered tithing to the beauty store when Sunday morning isn't enough. So, last week we were talking about the things. We were talking about how she worked through her self-work. She was suing God for back taxes, and she had, ungendered God, which is different, right, than what we know. And then she was also talking about how, God being a helicopter parent by way of the different ideology and thought processes of why he would have created the punishment that he did in the Garden of Eden. So this week we are doing chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7, because instead of being a 3-chapter read, we're doing 4 chapters every week. So essentially, let's start off and let's just go ahead and get into chapter 4, where she talks about how the name of the chapter is God Made Me Black. And this is the brows, the eyeshadow, the liner, and the lashes. Let me tell you something, sis. I have no liner on today. And it just... because the liner wasn't lining the way I wanted to line. And you know how sometimes in your spirit, you be like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. I put on no liner and I put on no lashes. And you want to know why? Because it's a lot. It's a lot some days to really just put yourself together. Listen, I gave y'all good eyebrow gel. I'm giving y'all the closest thing to a red lip that I can give you in my life at this time, in this moment, that is something that is fall worthy, but also in the family of the red. And it supports more than one Black woman. I'm doing what I can. Okay, anyway, but that's not what we're talking about. This is what she's talking about. She said, God made me black. So let me tell you, I was here for this chapter and its relatability with to the experiences with Christian white people in the North and in the South. She really gave a deliberateness of quiet as is kept in these Christian viewpoints and things like that. The South is way more vocal about how they don't fool with you. The North, on the other hand, honey, let me tell you, that's a different type of a brand right there. That is a different type of, we don't like Black people, but we justify it by saying that people need to be saved, delivered, set free, and this, that, and the third. But we also actually do like white people, and we like Black people, and we are liberal by way of, because Jesus told us to, and this is how Jesus told us how we should behave and do the things. And honey, it is a bunch of shenanigan tree. Anytime you go to church and your pastor have you stand up and give the Pledge of Allegiance, I don't know, and force you to do things that is not necessarily within your bandwidth because you are Black and you got questions. Anytime you leave church and you go, I don't know. But listen, she addressed it and I was here for it. I was like, yes, ma'am. It's different in the South than it is because a lot of times in the South, Black people, white people are not worshiping together. And if they are, you know that is an ally and maybe an accomplice for you. However, in the North, it's different, friend. It is different. And it is very much so stealthy and under the radar. That's all I got to say. That's it. So let me tell you something. She also talked about her background and her experiences with white people growing up in the South and North Carolina. And she talked about how one night her mother was going somewhere and the KKK was walking around in their hoods. Mind you, let us be clear of the timeline of this. Candice Marie Bimbo is in her 30s. So that means that this took place somewhere around the 1990s. Let me give you a timeline. Somewhere around the 1990s, William Clinton is more than likely president. If he's not president, George H.W. is possibly president. Either way, the shenanigans should not be the shenanigans because it is 1990s and the Civil Rights Act was passed in the 1960s. Let's just be clear on that. Let's get our history together. But you got the Klan walking around in a North Carolina in the broad daylight with the hoods on. And as a Black child, she can remember this. In the backseat of her mom's car. Just what? Just wow. So I couldn't relate to that. I could not. Not to say that the Klan wasn't alive and well in the area where I grew up. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I couldn't relate to that particular situation. But then she said a middle school friend who she used to play with regularly, because she was enrolled in this Christian school during middle school. Because again, she has a middle class upbringing, middle class Baptist church going single mother upbringing, from what we learned last week. And honey, let me tell you, everybody breathe deep because this is gonna trigger you. She said her friend tried to tie a rope around her neck and hang her, putting the rope through the basketball hoop, saying, my grandfather said they used to do this to them, and so we can too. Again, she's in middle school now, friend. So guess what? That's late 90s, early 2000s. Because again, she's in her 30s. Late 90s, early 2000s, or late 80s, mid 90s. Like either way it goes, inappropriate. Like on so many levels, just inappropriate. Wow. But here's the thing though. I could not relate to those, but let me tell you something. I related to sis because I'm like, there's usually, if you grow up as a Black child in the South, there will come a reckoning unto you. You do not have to ask for it, but it just comes unto you, where someone who is white, more than likely a child, because you are in the space of being a child, someone who is white is going to remind you of your Blackness. And it's, I don't know why this was a thing as children growing up, or why Black children still have to deal with it in these days and stages. But essentially, what took place for me, I related, just not to this capacity. Because I can remember riding my bike and three white girls attempted to bully me because I'm Black, riding my bike in the neighborhood. And I was called all types of NIGGERs. Had to go home, tell my mama. And unfortunately, like, we didn't know where they stayed because, you know, my mom was ready to get in the car and go on down to the house and knock on the door. However, we didn't. So because didn't know where these girls stayed or what have you, or even if they were in the neighborhood vicinity. And so with these experiences, which I actually agree with her on, she goes to page 65. On page 65, she actually talks about how with these types of situations, being Black can give you an adjusted view of white people. And she says it. She says on page 65, the thick, ever lingering presence of white supremacy makes you adjust your expectations of white people, even as you push them to do better through policy, advocacy, and accountability. And you push them to do better because the Constitution and the laws are on your side, not because you actually believe they're going to do the right thing. If you didn't understand what she was saying just then, let me translate it for you. Hello, today my name is Ariel and I'll be your translator for this evening. What she's basically saying about Black people having an adjusted view of white people is this. It is up to us as Black people to hold white people accountable for doing better than what their ancestors and their forefathers and their grandparents have done. And the reason why we have the right to do that is because now the law is on our side. Hence the Civil Rights Act and other amendments that have been put in place for the protection of a lot of people. Even though it's still not enough, there are some things that are in place now that are enforceable. However, even though we enforce these laws because we know that it is right and lawful to do, we don't necessarily believe that our white brothers and sisters are actually going to do the things just because it's the right thing to do, but more so because they don't want to be labeled racist or bigot in a 2022 world. Put a piece of gum in your mouth and chew on that. Because she brought a whole sermon. I don't know where y'all are tithing at on this Sunday, but just based off of that reality, put something in the plate. Put something in there. Oh, goodness. Okay. So she highlights that she talks about her dismissal from the PhD program that she was in at a predominantly white university of divinity. She had lost her mother. And when I say lost her mother, meaning her mother had passed away. She requested a leave of absence 4 times, or 3 to 4 times, to be clear. She was talking to her advisor, a white guy, who is telling her all the things and like, I wish they would just go ahead and give you this and what you need, and talking about the administration so bad and how this is unlawful and all of this. Candice pulls her receipts and says, let me tell you something. This is neglect. I just want y'all to understand. And if I have to escalate this and go somewhere else, again, reinforcing the fact that they're not going to act right unless you put the law on them. So then they say, well, we'll give you the leave of absence if you ask for it again. And she was like, no, I'm not. So they then vote to dismiss her from the program. And they voted to, after her advisor changed his tune when they saw his receipts saying that, oh, Miss Bimbo must have misinterpreted what I said because this is what I meant. Oh, really? And so she talked about how the adjusted view, a lot of times of Black people when it comes to white people, not everybody, but sometimes when you have had traumatic experiences like this, where you are already a little distrusting of the Caucasian persuasion, listen, friend. Her point was that a lot of times in these perspectives, you almost have to look at it from the standpoint that if it comes down to you or them, they're going to choose themselves. They're not, even if what they know is happening is wrong, they are still going to choose and vie for themselves. Self-preservation at all costs. Does not matter who is in the crossfire. So yeah, She said that they dismissed her. A professor approached her and said, you should go away quietly, and tried to give her $5,000 of hush money. Honey, do you not know that woman got her a lawyer and she got way more money than the $5,000? Because again, the utter disrespect, the utter silencing. And Michelle Obama talks about it in her book, Becoming. When you start talking about a woman, especially a Black woman, when you start calling a Black woman angry, and you start trying to silence her by calling her, or invalidating her by calling her an angry Black woman, why would you not think that you would not get more of the same? And so she was like, oh, okay. And so just like Michelle Obama did to that guidance counselor, the high school, Candice Marie Bimbo said, oh, okay, I'll show you. Went and got her lawyer and got her money for the hardship and the neglect. She just lost her mom. And again, this is reaffirming what she's already experienced in childhood, when that young man tried to create a noose, a makeshift noose out of a jump rope, tried to hang her. And she was the one who was sent to the office. And when she asked to call her mother, they refused. You better know that when her mother was that young, she turned that car around, went down there to that principal's office, made that principal feel this small. And she took her child out of that school and put her in a public school. Because what's the point? What's the point in enrolling your child, who's already one of few, in a Christian prep type school, thinking that it's for their safety? And kids are cruel. Christian kids are cruel. Or, you know, this is supposed to be people who love Jesus and walking according to the ways of Jesus. And this boy felt justified by way of his grandfather, who said some shenanigans, and now he's created a makeshift noose. And he, mind you, he was not sent to the office. She was. What that tell you? Just, and it's still the same type of skewed views today. If someone says, I'm going to call the police, a lot of times, or if an altercation is happening and there are multiple races involved, the Black person in the room, even if they are innocent, are immediately assumed as the person to start something, instigate something, to be guilty. And she addresses this, and I'm like, yes, ma'am. And so she also asked this question about, you know, the Christian white people. And she actually said she wondered why the Holy Ghost didn't convict these individuals who claim to love Jesus. And that is a great question, because how your Holy Ghost don't hit you here or in your shana, how it don't hit you in your shana, I don't know. But yes. But then she, you know, one thing that Candice Marie Bimbo is going to give you in this book is moments for critical thinking. And she gave us that on page 75. What would this world be if the daily prayer of white people was to be less white? To be discentered and made to honor the lived experience of others? What would white people do if they realized God intended for their cultures and experiences to be expressed equally alongside those in the rest of humanity? And then she also followed it up with, can they hurry up and figure it out? And I was just like, wow, this chapter had me, you know, y'all saw the excitement on 10, because how in the world, where is it okay? Because it is not at all okay. But here we go. Moving on to chapter 5. And she entitled this Amazing Grace for Side Chicks. Let me tell you something. This chapter and the Amazing Grace for Side Chicks, let me tell you what's part of the skincare regime. It's the contour and the concealer is the Amazing Grace for the side chicks. And I said, ooh, child, I'm not ready. So let me tell you, I was flabbergasted and floored by this chapter. I found myself angry with Candice's admission of being a side chick, but also trying to hear from her and her perspective as the side chick. And essentially, one thing that I was like, Candice, why? But she actually talked about how she genuinely loved this man. She didn't want him to ruin his family because she was in agreement with what he said. He said he wasn't divorcing his wife because he didn't want to create the domino effect of the torture of the kids, right? Okay, cool. But then he wound up getting the divorce anyway. And then he turned around and married somebody else. Now, honey, listen. Honey, I could, Whew. Let me tell you something. Candice Marie Bimbo had me on the fritz in these last 2 chapters because I was just like, girl, what in the world? And I kept trying to find myself extending grace. But I think, here's the thing about chapter 5 that I absolutely saw myself doing. I was like, I'm trying to understand her perspective as the side chick. She understands her perspective. She understands where she's wrong. She's not trying to apologize for this man's antics, and she's not trying to make excuses for her own. She knows her responsibility in this space. She knows her role. She talks about how she got caught up and all of that. So we understand that there is a learned understanding of the shenanigans of Candice being a side chick for the amount of time that she was. Okay, so I get that. But I think at one point I was just like, you know how sometimes you sit as the homegirl on the sidelines and you're like, well, whenever you ready, sis, to come out of what you dealing with, I'm gonna be right here, ready to into your arms, you know, that situation. But I will say, I was able to take a few highlights from the chapter, because one thing that I didn't want to really focus on, and one thing that she didn't focus on too much, was the triflingness of this man. Because I think a lot of times too, I will say this, Candice gave herself a good deal of accountability in the shenanigans that she participated in, and how she was really doing this as a way, and she addressed it, she was doing this as a way to find herself worthy, to essentially, she created herself as a pick-me for this man, and he still didn't go with it. Like, at the end of the day, he decided to go with someone else. And before they actually became physically intimate and things of the likes, she talked about how she really did try not to get into that space. She tried to keep a boundary, but the boundary, you know, at some point was blurred because she really did like him. They had a strong friendship, things of that nature, and then they led themselves into the temptation. But here's what I can say. That she learned, and some of the highlights of what she took away from page 88. She learned that you can't be treated well in an affair. Number 1, cannot be treated well in an affair. And she said, what I mean is, you can't be in an affair and expect to be treated ethically. I was actively participating in this man being dishonest to his wife, the mother of his children, and was expecting him to be honest with me simply because I was honest with him. And sis, how? She recognized and she realized that because this is an unethical situation, she was being dealt with unethically, even though she brought some of her ethics to the forefront in order to be treated as such. The fact that she had to face the hard truth that she is pouring into this relationship out of the space of brokenness within herself. And a lot of times, sis, lean in. And here's where I was like, you know what? Here's where we can relate. Maybe we weren't the side chick or anything like that, or the side bro. Maybe we weren't that, but lean in and let me tell you this. Even if you weren't that, there have been some relationships where you've accepted the bare minimum from somebody and it was shenaniganry when you entered it, and you knew it was shenaniganry when you exited, because you were giving out of a space of insufficiency from the fragments of whatever issues, daddy issues, mommy issues, brokenness, for not feeling as if you are enough. You accepted the shenanigans. So we can't be over here judging Sister Bimbo for being a side piece, when the reality is we side pieced ourselves a few times. That's all I'm saying. If you can't say amen, say ouch. Okay. Don't judge the good sis, because at least she's come to terms with her shenanigans. Have you come to the terms with yours? All right. I don't want no mess about you. All right. And finally, she highlights the space of her experiencing grace. Listen, go on down to your church on Sunday and tithe off of page 93 in the experience of grace. Because let me tell you, she hit a whole Israel Houghton. Where would I be if not for your grace? Like literally, she hit that for the chapter 5 ministry of the Amazing Grace for the side chicks. Because listen, you can sit here and put yourself on a pedestal all you want to, like, at least I wasn't a side chick, but listen, you have done some shenanigans as well, and you need to go on and thank God for the grace that he put in our lives, because but for the grace carrying us in every season, where would we be? Huh? Again, if you can't say amen, say out. So I thought she did a fantastic job of chapter 5, even though I was floored for most of it. All right, moving on to chapter 6. We should all be womanists. And let's see what this is. The bronzer, honey. This is the bronzer. It makes you shine, you know, the bronzer. All right, so I really did love this chapter. I saw this chapter as a beautiful ode to the care and correction that a Black woman can receive from the love of the Black women in her space, in her circle, the ones that keep the crowns, the jewels in her crown. Just, I thought, oh, beautiful work. I mean, I thought it was just absolutely done well. I really didn't have a lot to really talk about from that, except for the pieces that she dropped to read around womanism, of Race, a Theological Account by J. Cameron Carter, Sisters in the Wilderness by Dolores S. Williams, Making a Way Out of No Way by Monica Coleman. She talked about how Monica Coleman was really a big part of the womanist movement that she really wanted to be a part of. She talked about, you know, some of the Black womanists ahead of her that had paved the way, and also how they were feeling some type of way about the opportunities that they were receiving, even though they were, you know, that their mentees were receiving, even though they were the ones to pave the way. And how, you know, sometimes when mentors mentor out of a space of brokenness as well, there can be some trauma and some damage that is left behind, even in the wake of trying to teach them in the ways of how they would handle something if they were the one to get the opportunity. So I thought it was wonderfully done. She listed off a lot of women that were in her circle. Obviously, this was also an ode to her mother, because her mother was calling her out and pulling her coattail when she was sounding a little too out there and a little too sedity for her choices. And by sedity, I mean, like, she's really out of pocket with some of the things that she's saying. And, like, you know, again, who can tell you when you're wrong? And she really just gave this chapter as an ode to the women who can tell her when she's wrong. And I thought that it was absolutely beautiful, because again, every woman is not going to be your friend. Every woman is not going to be your bosom buddy. Like, every Black woman is not going to be, you know, your kumbaya session. Some are there for, you know, for the long haul. others are there for seasons. Some will rock with you because they absolutely love you and they love how you handle them. Others won't rock with you because they can't stand how you handle them or you hurt their feelings. And that's okay. I think it was the permission around it to be like, you know what? I might rock with you. Some women don't rock with me, and I don't rock with some women, but it's okay. As long as we understand when we've hurt someone, that we go back and get it right, that we apologize and we attempt to grow from the experience. So I was just like, beautifully done. All right. Chapter 7. This is the last one, and this is going to be a doozy, friend. So hold on to your butt. Or I'll say this like this. If you are very conservative, this is going to be a doozy for you. So hold on to your butt, buttercup, but we're going to get through it. Okay. All right. Just breathe deep, sweetheart. We're going to get through it. Okay. Chapter 7 is survived by a special friend. So she started this off talking about how she loved going to funerals. And I was like, Candice. But you know what? Some people do. I had this auntie who absolutely loved going to funerals, even to the people who she didn't know. Honey, she would take a disposable camera and take pictures at the viewing of the body. And had a photo album of the pictures of the bodies that she viewed. Now, if that's your ministry, God bless you. That is not the ministry of mine, or a testimony or testament of mine that I like to carry. But God bless you. I'm not going to yuck your yum. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. But in this chapter, she talks about how growing up in the Baptist church, because listen, and she's not lying, because some of the obituaries that have been seen, she's not lying. They're survived by a special friend. This chapter is addressing the evolution of her theology concern toward it. Her theology concerning the LGBTQIA plus community. I told you, breathe through it. You're going to be fine. If you're conservative, breathe through it. You're going to be fine. We're going to get through this. There's no need to just, there's no need to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. Because we're going to sift through this. You can still disagree at the end of the day. Again, remember what I've said in some of our previous videos. I welcome the disagreement, just as long as you do so respectfully. But what we're not going to tolerate on this channel in these comments is disrespect of any kind. Point blank and a period. Okay? Here's the thing. She elucidates on her own hypocrisy, because again, she's talking about her journey, not everybody else. I thought that she did a great job in this chapter of elucidating the things, and I was here for it. Candice elucidates on her hypocrisy of how she saw herself better than her friends who were gay, simply because she wasn't gay, even though she was out here thotting and a bopping. So listen. Let me say it again for the people in the back who didn't understand. Candice Marie Bimbo elucidates in her story of how she saw herself better than her gay friend because she wasn't gay, even though Candice was out here fornicating, right? So does that make it clear for you guys? She feels that her fornicating is better than her gay friend because fornicating is not as bad of a sin as being gay. Okay. Now, I don't know, friend, let me lean in for this, because I was raised in a different type of household with different type of standards and rules that said this: all sin is sin, and it's all at the same level. The only difference between your sin, pregnant girl sin, or the gay man sin is that you can see theirs. But just because you out here sliding and slipping, tipping and dipping, does not mean that your sin is any less great than those whose sin can be seen at the moment. Okay. And I thought she did a wonderful job, because she put herself on blast. Like, Candice Marie Bimbo put herself on blast, because she literally talked about how one of her friends would call her as an accountability person to pray the gay away. Meanwhile, when the friend called, Candice is in some man's bed after just doing shenanigans of the fornication persuasion, and gets out of the bed to pray for her friend, again, to pray the gay away. The audacity and the unmitigated gall is all that I have to say, because what in the hierarchy of sins are you doing? Like, girl, what? Like, first and foremost, can we just all take a moment to pray? Because if your friend called you, listen, the conversation should have gone like, well, friend, I need you to help me pray about this. Well, girl, go on, help me pray about this too, because I just got out of this bed with this man. Hello, somebody. Like, girl, what? Okay. Okay, no tea, no shade. God bless. Like, literally, God bless. But she also talks about, in the space of her relationships to the ideals and the ideology around LGBTQIA, especially growing up as a Black woman in the Baptist church. Because listen, as I'm sitting here discussing the shenanigans of Candice Marie Bimbo, and yes, I did have parents who, I had a mom and a stepdad who said, no, there's no hierarchy of sin. But growing up in a Black Baptist church, child, listen, there was the doctrine of the hierarchy. You could say that all sin is equal sin, but the hierarchy and the behaviors that you saw down to the church showed it was a hierarchy. That's all I'm saying. And so, as she talks about how she's had to unlearn the hate the sin, love the sinner situation of around LGBTQIA community, I actually related to her in this space, because I think I was also in a space of a conservative view until I had a moment with, the Holy Ghost, and he convicted my shanana, especially as it pertained to friends of mine who were a part of the LGBTQIA community, but also still loved God and served more fervently than I did when I moved to Houston. Let's be clear. And I was like, oh, their love of Jesus is wow. But they also have this partner who is same gendered. And how do you reconcile that? It's the same thing as someone who is out here fornicating, love the Lord, but they're still fornicating. At some point, there is a soul, and there's a scripture that I go to that keeps me free. You want me to tell you what that scripture is? Work out your own soul salvation with fear and trembling, aka, let me translate, mind your business. My best friend TJ got a song out on his YouTube page called Mind Your Business. And listen, drink your water, mind it. But she addresses unlearning the hate the sin, love the sinner situation. And there is also a sermon by what's her name? Oh gosh, I love this lady, Dr. Anita Phillips, where she is having a conversation. I believe it's on TBN, it's on YouTube, where she is actually, it's her, Kristen Kane, I believe Priscilla Schreier as well, and somebody else. And they're having the conversation where she talks about how she don't like the whole hate the sin, love the sinner, because this holy hate that we as Christians are doing, we're not doing a good job at it. Because essentially what comes out of it is the sin hierarchy. I'm paraphrasing it to say that what comes out of it is the sin hierarchy, and so we don't necessarily do a good job, as opposed to Jesus, who himself said, "He who is without sin cast the first stone," with the woman with the adultery happening, and when no one could point it out or say that they don't have sin, they put the stones down and everybody went home. Like, listen, you know what? Sometimes we have to practice that even in the 2022. Put the stone down, whatever it may be, to whomever you think that it is justified going to. Put the stone down, go home, work out your own soul salvation with fear and trembling. Because if you focus on yours, you can't focus on theirs. That's all I'm saying. So, now, overall, with Candice and where she is in her journey now, she believes she can't be someone who addresses marginalization around racism, sexism, and classism, and stunt the growth and understanding marginalization for herself, and understanding that around gender and sexuality. That is where she sits in her intersectionality of feminism and blackness, feminism and womanism for Black women in the church, and the marginalization in the church and outside of the church. Overall, she can't reconcile the person that she wants to be with doing one and not doing the other. And I was just like, well, sis, you know what? God bless it. I can't tell people how to think or feel about whatever it is, but this journey obviously has given her a space to try to be an advocate, and also to see other people's struggles, not just the centric struggles of herself. And I thought that's a very empathetic approach to have, as opposed to just focusing on your own self struggles and not anyone else's. Okay. She also listed queer theologians she's reading as well, to kind of get more of, to try to understand more of the empathy around that, with Bishop Yvette Flunder, Pamela Lightsey, Daryl Moore, Horace Griffin, and Eric Thomas. And so I thought that these 4 chapters kind of gave me an excitement and a run for my money. I was really excited about the things and everything that she talked about. Next week, though, we are going to finish out Red Lip Theology. We are going to finish it, honey, once and for all, I think. Yeah, because it's a 3-week. We're doing a 3-week, and this is already week 2. And so we are going to finish out 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 8, 9, 10, and the conclusion, which is, no, we're going to do, 8, 9, 10 in the conclusion, which is Black Lace Teddies and Other Pieces I Rock Under the Anointing, Leaving Church, Psalm 90 and 12, and then the conclusion. We may actually start The Light We Carry next week after this. However, if I can't get The Light We Carry immediately following Red Lip Theology, have no fear. Another book is here. We could possibly be doing The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which I read the back of it and I was just like, this is something. This is something here. So, and I've heard rave reviews about this book, so I also want to read it. So even if we don't read it immediately following Red Lip Theology, I'm sure maybe even possibly after Stacey Abrams' While Justice Sleeps End, and in the midst of In the Light We Carry, I may actually introduce it. Okay, guys, this has been fun. I have thoroughly enjoyed myself and you. It has been a space of critical thinking. I have been triggered a lot because she tackles a lot of topics that people are not necessarily ready to have open dialogue about without immediately being pissed off and yelling at the screen or yelling at the book. And I think she does a great job of at least asking some critical thinking questions that could really spark good conversation if people are willing to actually have the conversation. If not, again, let me know in the I invite you to leave your comments below. Again, as I stated, the only thing that I ask is that you be respectful. I'm open to disagreement wherever the disagreement may be. I'm big enough. I'm a big girl, guys, and I'm a big enough person to understand that everybody is not going to agree with me. I just ask that you disagree in a respectful manner. Okay, guys? All right. So next week is the last week of Red Lip Theology, and I look forward to seeing you then. So until then, saints and ain'ts, I'll be seeing you. Bye.